Pak Trias, you wanna take over to have a chat about where we are now with the development? Cool.
Yes, please, Pak Trias, to continue about the idea of the Pak Polteng regarding to the cooperation between UGM and SIXCAP, and the support from SIXCAP on how to tackle the issue of the transboundary issue of the haze problem, ranging from providing very high resolution geospatial data and also combination with crowdsourced power. Please, Pak.
Okay, thank you, Pak Danang. Pak Paul has mentioned about the initiative, the collaboration that we like to embark, and actually the haze, we call it flying problems, but we also have the ground problems, and the ground problems where the peatlands are utilized, and also peatlands are, let's say, exposed for many uses. So, as Paul mentioned, we like to mobilize collaboratively not only government resources, but also companies, concessions, and also the community. And one of the things that we consider this is very important to be done, because at the moment the government measure for the success of the fire reduction and peat fire reduction haze problems is the number of the hotspots, where we know very well that these hotspots satellites data low resolutions, and in the literature we can see that it's only 60%, 70% of the accuracy. So you can imagine everything with white, with a haze from the image can be detected as a haze, or as a problems fire. But it can be all people in a kampung cook together, and then you have asap, and then it can be also detected as a hotspot. So we need a ground truth, and the ground truth means how we can mobilize people on the ground to tackle together to improve the accuracy of the data of the satellites, which is used by the government as a measure to, let's say, make an early warning system. So, in fact, we try to improve early warning system by mobilizing, let's say, involving communities to take actions. Of course, we realize that people living in the peatland areas, remote areas, they are not as lucky as we are in the cities with a good or very good telecommunication networks. There, you just have 2G. Maybe there's no coverage for telecommunication network. Something that we need to realize. So, the applications that we are trying to develop is targeting to two users, the big users. The first users are village leaders, activists, the community leaders living in the area where their communication with a mobile telephone is very limited, only using 2G, so SMS-based communication. So we try to think, at the moment we have developed the mock-up how the coordinates from the GPS or from the location of the triangulation of the networks can be used to supply information about the location, and also the eye reporting of the community on the field. So the level of the severity of the haze visibility can also be reported there. It should be automatically changed or shifted when the networks are provided with a good, for example, with a good services, 3G, then mobile data can be sent. So something we are working on at the moment, we call it GeoCrowd, so participatory haze mitigation, where we hope that this model can be used not only in Pulau Padang, our pilot model, but also in other areas where people living in the remote areas, and they are actually concerned about their environment, how they are free from peat fire, free from haze. And secondly, we are also working to develop augmented reality game for education and for advocation, where people, once they are also playing the games, but also they can supply information about their environment in related to haze mitigation. And this, hopefully, these flying problems, haze, what is haze that can be captured by the handphone, can be used, the data can be used for government in the backstage to make analytical findings, and also preparation, contingency planning, what to be done in the next months or the next weeks, something like that. So this is the first attempt that we try to develop. So how collaboratively we mobilize people to harnessing data, and also making use of technology to make or to mitigate the haze. Secondly, we are also working to model how a comprehensive solution on the ground can also be done, started from the planning. And when we talk about the planning of these peatland areas, one of the lacking data is the detailed information about what's going on the field, on the ground, how peatlands are utilized, how canals have been built, how land conversion has been doing. We're not, and how topography or how elevation at the moment are going. We are not having this information in very detail. So once we have this detailed information, the presidential mandate for peatland restoration that will be addressed by Pak Budi Wardana from BRG can be done easily, because the mandate is about rezonation, it's about re-wetting, how to make the peatland still wet although in the dry season, and how revegetation can be done to ensure that the peat fire cannot be repeated again. That can be done easily in a planning when we have a detailed data information for engineering and planning purposes. So that's all, Pak Danang, at the moment I'd like to address.
Okay. You would like to add? Okay,
yeah.
please.
So Pak Trias is an expert in geospatial intelligence systems, and I think, like I mentioned earlier when I first spoke, was that no one understands this problem better and deeper than the Indonesians themselves, and therefore, in order to co-create the solution, right, we must definitely include all the different stakeholders, including the people that own the concessions, including academia, including the private sector, including businesses, and including government as well. Because I think from our perspective, it's that, at least from the many thorough discussions that we had so far, if you look at the internet space, they only understand one perspective of the problem. But in the many discussions that we've had, the problem goes a lot deeper than that. And I think the key point here, and SIXCAP's involvement in this initiative really is to look at how we can co-create a preventive solution and approach, right? Dealing with the limitations that are available to us towards stepping forward to solving this issue, not for Singapore, not for Indonesia, but as an ASEAN community. I think that's where it's key. And in order to do so, to co-create a preventive approach really is to see how we can harness the power of the crowd to come together, right, to formulate this approach and solution. So yeah, that's pretty much the preamble that's for the initiative. And once things start to escalate and develop, and then we'll be really excited to share that with you once we're done with that. So thank you.
So thank you. I think that what mentioned by Pak Trias and also Pak Paul actually the showcase and also the initiative from the academia and also from the industry, from the private sector, how we would like to initiate to tackle the problem of the haze become national problem. So this is our perspective from the academia and also from industry. However, we also have Pak Priwadana from PRG, Badan Restorasi Gambut, National Agency for Peatland Management. So actually, Pak Budi, actually this year we are safe, yeah, relative safe from the haze, relatively, because thanks to the La Nina period that we have a very excessive rainfall. I think most double than normal. Yeah, we have almost we don't have a dry season in this year. So actually we quite comfortable with this. But we don't know from the next year. So we have to prepare. Now we are entering in a peak season of the rain season. But we would like to enter in the dry season for the next year. So actually, what is the perspective from the government? What you are actually from the government side to prevent the next haze problem? What is our strategy that you as the coordinator from the restoration of peatland management? Please, Pak.
Okay, if we look into the mandate that given by the president to us when the president established the BRG, with the Presidential Decree number 1, 2016, the main task that was given to BRG, is to coordinate and facilitate the peatland restoration. This is first. The second is to prevent further disaster as we saw in the 2015 and the previous years towards these years. So the president also gave us mandate that the target for the restoration is 2 million hectares or more. But that's only the target for restorations. The other part for the preventions, if we accumulate all those, the restorations, the preventions, and then the rezonations of the areas, which one for the cultivation, which one for the protections, it's end up that the task of PRG in total is more than 9 million hectares, or almost 10 million hectares if we count all those. 2.9 already in the protected status, as in the protected areas, as the conservation areas and the protections forest. But the remaining still have to be dealt with. For instance, in the presidential decree, from the 2 tasks, we have 9 specific activities that should be done. First of all, is strengthening the policy of the government, meaning that it's not only for PRG, but the policy on the spatial planning, policy on the agriculture, policy on the infrastructure, and so on and so forth. Second is on rezonations, as I mentioned before, because we have to really understand where the peatland, the situation of the peatland, and the way that we utilize the peatland, because we never done really a detailed mapping of peatland. The map that we have of a peatland as a basis for the planning for the development of the peatland based on 1 to 250,000 scale. It's not really accurate, it's not really enough to have a good planning over that information that we have. So in order for us to able to rezone the areas, we need at least 1 to 50,000 scale. So currently we work together with the support from the government of Norway and WRI. We do the mapping using LiDAR to have a bigger scale of map. We use the LiDAR technology, and for this year, our target is to finalize around 600,000 hectares using LiDAR technology. So what kind of geospatial information that we need to have? First of all is on the biophysics. because peatland management means we manage over the areas that sit upon peak biomass. If we did the development wrongly or put the planning in the areas that not supposed to be open up for the any activities there, then you end up with dry up those peatland, and those peatland, if it's dry up, then you sit on fuel, easily get burned, and the haze problems that we have last years. On peatland area, we have incident of 875,000 hectares of the total 2.6. But the haze produced by those areas that less than 60%, less than 40% of the total burn area on 2016, it's produced haze more than 80% of the total burn area. So we have really have to be careful in planning and managing those peatland. So after the strengthening of the policy, then do rezonations. The third activities that we should conduct it is on the how to manage peatland better, meaning that if any other plan is to be conducted on peatland, we need to have really good data to be able to, for instance, for the canal development, designing the canal, where you should develop the canal, where you should not develop the canal. If you can develop the canal, where you should develop the infrastructure for blocking and so on and so forth. And afterwards, you need also to understand on those kind of peatland, what kind of commodities that you can grow there. Not all the commodities that currently been developed over the peatland is suitable for peatland. Why? Because sometimes the commodity requires so much drainage system. You need drainations to be able to make the palm oil, for instance, to grow well. You need a really good drainage system if you want to have your fiber plantations grow well. But what is the effect of the over drainage of the areas? There will be over drainations and makes the surface of the peatland dry and susceptible to fire. So it comes to the other issues of educating and socializations to other stakeholders, not only for the farmers, the small-scale farmers, but also for the concession holders. So even if you have a license to develop on peatlands, what kind of activities that allowable on those areas, in how you manage your production system, and so on and so forth. For that, the geospatial information is the key to have a good or best plan for the sake of the sustainable development, and also to prevent further fire happening over the peatland. So that's the policy that the government takes.